What's going on, everybody? Teddy Baldassarre here, and in this video we're going to continue with the Q&As as things slowly get back to normal in the world that we're living in. I had people submit questions on my Instagram, so let's go through them and answer your questions. So the first two questions here, kind of similar, just two different scenarios. One is, what are some things that I should think about before buying my first watch? The other one is looking more towards the luxury end. What should I do for buying my first luxury watch or a Rolex? So I think for the most part, some of the same aspects are going to apply to both of these scenarios, but looking first at the first watch type of question, because I think that's a little bit more involved. If you're early on in the stage of developing yourself as a collector, I think the first thing to figure out is what type of watches are you gravitating towards. Try to save up as much money as you can and go after that watch. Some things that I see people maybe not considering fully is how watches are going to wear on the wrist. Consider both case size and lug to lug, factor in your wrist size. If you can, even if it's not the watch that you're looking to purchase, try to compare it to watches that you do have access to. Even if it's cheap fashion watches that you just have at your disposal locally, that will really help you out in making that decision. Also, you want to consider movements. If you're in this early stage, just know the difference between a quartz movement, know the difference between different types of mechanical movements or automatic hand winding. Most likely you're going to be dealing with mostly automatics versus quartz watches at the lower price tiers if you're looking to invest in your first watch. In addition, know the different groups. You have Seiko Epson, you also have the Citizen group, the Swatch group, you can go for Timex as well. Just know all the different watches available to you in that early kind of price tier, but that's gonna really help you out in making your decision just to see the entire landscape. In addition, also consider resale value. I know for the more affordable range of things, or maybe for your first watch, this perhaps might not be as much of a deal breaker as if you're investing in a luxury watch. You're definitely gonna maybe wanna look out for that a little bit more. I never wanna put too much weight on this because I think if you like a watch, just get it. I think it's a great thing to enjoy, but it's good to also have some confidence that if you do change your mind in these early stages that you can do it. And chances are, if you're new to watches and you're still developing your taste, this is gonna happen. And then I think another thing that's really important is just understand your lifestyle. Are you gonna actually wear the thing? That's so important. And also, rather than maybe thinking about trying to collect, just go for the best watch you possibly can, buy some different straps. Don't get falling in love with the fact that people just talk about their watch collections. When you're just starting out, just take it slow, one step at a time, figure out your taste. But now jumping over to the luxury question, I think the resale value question does come into play here. If that's something you're maybe not sold on a watch completely, take your time here, especially though. I don't think you wanna be thinking about flipping a watch. Just go through this process rather slowly. And another thing I would say is look at the new versus pre-owned. If you are really seeing a big discrepancy there, try to go pre-owned if you can find a good deal. And then if you are going pre-owned, I would end up paying a little bit more for a better condition variant, especially if you're going for a vintage one option here, than trying to go for the cheapest option. Usually you're gonna find that you would rather just pay the extra, say, a few $100s more to get that better option available for you, because you'll enjoy it over the long period. These luxury watches, they're luxury watches. I mean, that's in the core of it. They should be enjoyed for years and years. The next question here is, with the watch industry being forced online during this pandemic, do you see the role of physical watch stores changing as the world gradually returns to normal? And I have been definitely taking a look at just the day-to-day kind of just progress with the industry, what's going on. Right now, it's kind of what I expected. Sales are down, but there's some really crazy and startling results here that we've been seeing coming out with statistics. Watch Pro just released an article that was really interesting for me, just to pull off some of the numbers here. Looking at across Great Britain, 97% of in-store watch sales are down. Of course, online sales are going up, but sales across the board still down 80%. Across the board when you even combine the increase in online watch sales. Watches of Switzerland were losing 13.5 billion pounds per week. A brand that, of course, is probably one of the best in the world at brick and mortar just setups and being an authorized dealer of Rolex, Patek Philippe, and really setting out these really intriguing environments, retail environments. And I would imagine that that's really hurting them, the fact that people can't just walk in. So that was very telling as one of the leaders in the entire industry there. And then I also saw a Hodinkee article getting into the details around Richemont, the large conglomerate that owns brands like Cartier, JLC, Vacheron, Panerai as well. Was down $800 million potentially lost over 3 months during this pandemic. So a lot of things are shaking loose right now, and the chairman of Richemont had this to say regarding the actual pandemic here and how things are going to be gradually opening up. We may be looking at 12, 24, or 36 months of grave economic consequences. Who knows? And I think he's probably right. There's also another report that with the 3 weeks being open up in Germany, sales in store locations are only 50% of what they were prior to all this going on. In seeing that article, they were kind of optimistic about that. That's a good number, but when you're thinking about an in-store location, the overhead is higher. Everything to kind of keep things going. Typically, when you're buying inventory, sometimes it's done on credit, of course. There's a lot of things to kind of consider here. So 50% of sales for a brick and mortar retailer with all those things considered is not good at all. And if that goes on for a long period of time, can really just could cripple them and could lead to them going out of business. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of maybe hard, slow going back to where we were. We were at a very strong economy before all this was happening. So things aren't going to go back to normal right away, even if things start opening up. But we'll have to see and just take this month by month. Next question is, what's all the hype around Richard Mille about? Is it deserved? So Richard Mille has really just come on the scene like crazy as of late. And I think a lot of this has become just through affiliation, social media hype. You got rappers talking about him, people in high places talking about him. They've done a really good job with brand ambassadorships with different people. Bubba Watson, you have, I believe Pharrell also is on their lineup of people and celebrities that they do business with, and of course Rafael Nadal. But I think it's all been a perfect storm. It'll be interesting with the things that are going on with the economy, plus perhaps maybe trends changing to see how Richard Mille will hold up. If I had to put my money on something, I would imagine that we're probably at peak Richard Mille. They make a great product, there's no question about it. $100,000, $200,000 good product, I don't know. That's for someone else to decide because I'm clearly not their target demographic, but I would imagine in 10 years time, we'll probably see a nice dip in their sales. If you're asking me, I think there's a lot of trend and hype around the brand that I don't see being sustained long-term, but I'm sure that they'll stick around and you have to respect of what they've been able to do. Next question is, will there be a completely made in USA watch brand again? If so, how long will it take to happen? So first off, there are brands that are doing some interesting things like RGM and Lancaster were Hamilton, and when they left in 1969, they're still producing watches here in the United States. But us as a culture in the United States, we do outsource a ton of our just production for development of goods. And with the upside of putting all the time intensiveness in creating a watch here, especially a movement, if we're talking about an in-house movement, the R&D required, the cost required, it's just a lot. And would you be able to push enough units? It would be appealing to a small demographic of watch enthusiasts that would really move the needle. Because in reality, the things that really sell here are just using, think about it, things that have actually moved the needle in the last 5 to 10 years in the United States. You got Shinola, you got Movement. Those are the brands that most people will know about that are outside of this little circle that we have here that is lovers of watches. So I don't know if the upside will ever be there. There probably are some people out there that potentially could do it. Weiss Watches out in California with Cameron Weiss is doing some interesting things. There's a handful of micro brands that out there, but would they actually do it here in the United States? I don't know. I don't know if there's upside to do it. Plus, there's just a lot of cost. Okay, Dan has our next question with, hey Teddy, what entry-level Swiss brand do you think has the widest range of watches in their collection? So for entry-level Swiss watches, I would say, you could think about Tissot, you can think about Certina, you can think about Mito perhaps, but I think Hamilton would probably be my choice for the most wide variety. You have their khaki line, which I think is very interesting. You have their Intramatic line, which I think is also very cool. That middle ground between the more casual field watches and then moving into more sporty stuff. You have their Navy Scubas. You have a lot of their vintage inspired pieces that they have. You have their Jazzmaster thin line. I think there's a ton of different watches there available, and you also have their chronographs for a little bit more money, like their Intramatic chronograph. I think Hamilton probably has the most variety. Don't overlook Tissot as well. I think a lot of people just consider their dress watches, but they also have great watches available, like their heritage models with their chronographs, as well as the Sea Star, which is, I think, a very underrated Swiss diver that you can get for, say, that middle road $500 to $1,000 bucks. But that would probably be my choice, probably Hamilton. Next question is tips on aesthetically picking straps that match/work with your watch. Help choosing different types and color, leather, pearl-on, canvas, NATO, rubber, etc. So answering this question, because you asked aesthetically, I think you're talking from a style point of view, so I'm going to answer it in that regard. If you're somebody that doesn't really care, you want to put a pink striped NATO strap on your Datejust, you know what, buddy, you can do it, let your freak flag fly. But in this case, I think there's a couple things to consider. One is the color and how you can match it with, say, a dial, for example, as well as the type of watch. I think the most important thing to consider first off is you don't want to be, for a dress watch, putting, say, a rubber strap on it, perhaps, as well as, say, a NATO strap. I don't think that's a good look, so just probably cross that off day one. So just make sure you have the right strap with the right watch. And the inverse too, you don't want to have a nice reptilian leather strap on a dive watch. I don't think that would work either. But then worth pairing with colors, I think just looking at a color wheel, just seeing what complements. What other leathers do you wear? Are you more of a brown leather guy? And you probably want to wear brown leather straps to match your whole ensemble. If you're a black leather guy, do that instead. For NATO straps, I typically don't like doing a lot of different colors. I personally, when I'm looking at a strap, I want something that's going to complement a dial, maybe not take away from a dial. I don't want to have the attention go to my strap, and there's other people out there that like getting attention with the strap, and it goes into the watch. That's their way of getting attention, but I'd rather have a timepiece just kind of do the talking for me, and really I don't really care about grabbing attention. So less is more when looking at straps. So go for something simple, pick a strap that's gonna be representative of what kind of feel the watch is giving off with its design, and I think you'll be off and running. Now for our next question, we have, what do you think of the Glace Combat Sub? So believe it or not, I actually owned a Glace Combat Sub. I sold it. That was even before starting the channel, so this was probably 4 years ago that I had one. And it just wasn't for me. It's a little bit too big, but overall, I think a pretty solid watch. But in terms of where they're at now, I'm a little concerned with the new designs of different Glace Combat Subs that are being released, because I think Invicta has slowly made their way into the Glace design, which to me, I don't think that's a good thing. But I think overall, there's a lot of really good deals. You can get these for pretty cheap for getting a Swiss-made movement inside these watches. And I think for the most part, when looking at the kind of more traditional designs of the Glace Combat Sub, I think they're pretty tasteful. Next question is, would like to know your thoughts on the best everyday watch that will still stand up to a beating and still look good at an evening meal with the misses. For instance, I just picked up a Traska and the coating is awesome. So first off, totally agree on the Traska. Really impressive coating on that case and in resisting scratches. A little bit more just pricey, I would say you go into Zin and Damasco territory, you're getting very similar case treatment, even better case treatment in my opinion. So those are two great brands to look at. Damasco, you can usually get the better case treatment at a more affordable price at around $1,000. So I think that's awesome by Damasco. For Zin, you have to pay a little bit more. You're starting getting closer to $2,000 to get that sort of case treatment there. And then if you're going up to a higher price range, for me, I think brush finishes or things that are not crazy polish are good things to go with. And you can say what you want about Rolex, but in terms of a brand out there that can deliver from the looks department, but also with just being robust with its movement and kind of taking a beating, I mean, they really can't do much better if you're looking at a more luxury kind of price tier. But of course, Omega as well is a great brand that can do kind of more of the same there with like their Aquaterras, for example. So a lot to choose from. Those are a couple of suggestions. Next question is, what do you think of Quartz Cartier tank? I was browsing recently and was surprised to learn that even at $5,000, the gold model was a Quartz movement. So with Cartier, I think they're so much influenced by fashion, and I'm not gonna say that they're a fashion watch brand because they certainly create some great watches as well, but for their Quartz options and what they bring to the market, you probably could debate buying new is maybe not the best idea. But also on the pre-owned side of things, you can find some pretty affordable Cartier tanks that aren't that far out of reach. They really do take a hit on the secondary market. They make so many of them that you can get some really good deals out there. So I think it really all depends. Are Cartiers the best value for money always? Probably not, but in terms of their design, there really is nothing more timeless than a Cartier tank on the wrist. And one more thing, I know for a lot of women who are really gravitating towards Cartier tanks, to be honest, people that are not watch people don't care that there's a Quartz movement inside of those things. So I think they just understand their customers as well. Now Josh has our next question. If cosmic forces allowed you to own only one watch, Not one watch at a time, but one watch in perpetuity, what would it be? So if I was gonna have one watch, I mean, I love my Rolex Explorer 2. This watch I really could have be my only one watch if I wanted to go in that direction. But if I had to choose one at a higher price range, I would probably go for the Vacheron Constantin Overseas Generation 3 blue dial. It looks the part in both scenarios. It has great optionality in terms of the straps and swapping it out on the fly. It's just a watch that could take on anything, so that would probably be my choice. This question comes from Owen. What tips do you have for a kid trying to get into watches? So I actually don't envy you at all the fact that you're getting into watches this early. I think it's great that you're getting into watches early, but if I got into watches early, I probably would have ended up doing something stupid and spending more money than I had. So in terms of looking at watches and how you should maybe embrace them, I mentioned earlier when talking about when starting out, don't fall in love with the idea of a collection. I think a lot of people just get into this consumerism mentality with buying watches. And when you're a kid, you feel like you have to keep up with the Joneses. Don't look around. Don't try to, impress anybody. Don't think that you're not a collector if you can't afford something. Just take as much money as you can. Think about a watch that you want to get, that you can get responsibly, that you're not, putting all your money towards it and you have nothing to your name. You're probably gonna have debts coming up soon with going to school or whatever your situation is. So just take the time, invest in learning as much as you can, have your mind set on one watch, buy it, learn as you're enjoying that watch, experience different things, grow with that watch, and just keep learning along the way, and really just beat that watch like crazy. And I guarantee you'll enjoy it much more if you spend as much money as you can responsibly on that watch. You'll always remember just the thought process that went into and the grueling just grind that was getting and achieving that watch and putting the work in. So that would be my recommendation. Grow old with this. This is not a sprint. Just like life, take your time, find one watch that's right for you. Don't worry about collecting unless you really want to collect, but do it responsibly and just have fun with it. So next question is a little sentimental. So let's see. I'd like to know your opinion on watches and why they are more than just a timepiece. What makes a watch sentimental to you, Teddy? So for me, in getting into watches, it all kind of came from me getting into my own style, starting to develop my own taste, and I'm a very curious person. So when I can find something that's interesting, it has depth to it, I get really into it. And when I learned all these different watches and all the different brands and the history behind it, for me, I was just really intrigued and I got hooked. I got hooked right around in college, couldn't afford watches really, so I was just getting out, and once I got out of school, I started collecting and getting my collection in order. So that was kind of, for me, why I got into it. But over time, watches have just become this thing for me. It's a way for self-expression and showing your individuality. It has depth to the hobby. There's a lot of interesting just dynamics with the mechanics, the development, the history. All of that is so intriguing to me. And then I love how these things can transcend us. They can live past us when quality timepieces are here. So for me, I have a couple watches from both of my grandparents that once I started getting into this, I asked both my parents, like, hey, do we have any watches? So from my dad's side, a guy that I'm not actually named after, a watch gifted to him long ago, a Wittenauer, which is really cool. And I went into kind of the backstory of that watch in my collection video that I did in 2018. And then recently I realized that my grandpa on my other side, my mom's side, had Hamilton, and that was gifted by all the kids in the family when he graduated from law school. So he was a lawyer and accountant, and that was a great way to commemorate when it was 1969, which is kind of cool because that was the last year that Hamilton was here in the United States. So for me, it's all of those elements, and it's just something that you can grow with. There's so many things in life that you kind of come and go by as you're aging, but watches for me are just something that go beyond that. They are timeless, and that's kind of funny because of the things that tell time, but that's really why I love watches. Now for our last question here, do you think the in-house Tudor movement will move to other models like the Black Bay 36? If so, what do you think that'll do for the value proposition? So the thing with Tudor, they've definitely put a lot of effort into developing more in-house calibers as well as options without their entire catalog. The only challenge with the 36 would be, would that take away from the other Black Bays? I think the 36mm would take away perhaps from the heritage lineup and their divers, but who knows? They might do it. I could see them being open to it now with the Black Bay 38 really exploding. They have different lines of movements now that they can also put in this thing. So they have their MT5612, which is a little bit bigger. So that's a 31 millimeter, 6 millimeter thick. So that's in their, the Pelagos, for example. And then they have the MT5402, which is in the Black Bay 58, which is substantially smaller and thinner at under 5 millimeters in thickness and 26 millimeters in diameter. So that would probably be the choice if they did want to start bringing this into smaller case sizes. I just don't know if they'd want that and that would be advantageous for them to put it in the 36. Would it sell? Oh, I bet it would, no question. All right guys, so if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Would really appreciate that as it does help out the channel and allowing us to grow on YouTube. Also, if you have any different takes or different answers to questions that I address in this video, love to see comments down below. If you want to stay up to date with what's going on with me, want to see some great photos of watches, follow me on Instagram as I try to communicate a little bit more in terms of day-to-day with the comments and things of that nature. So make sure to be following me there. So guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.